All right. But the merits of having offered this mandala to Lama Tsongkhapa and his two sons, may I, my family members, and all sentient beings be able to meet, practice, and actualize the teachings of victorious one Losam Draka. Where the morality of an eminently pure way of life was correct in the extensive conduct of the sons of the victorious ones, and accomplished the yoga of two stages of supreme bliss and emptiness. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniyatayami. But the force of having fervently requested in this way, hollow beams of white light are emitted from the hearts of the perfect pure father and sons, and combining into once enter my crown. White nectar, the color of milk, flows from the opening of the tube of white light, cleansing all my sicknesses, spirit harms, negative karmas, obscurations, and the imprints without exception. My body become as pure and clear as crystal. So we're going to go to page 13 and do the 5-line Mixima prayer 3 times. Mimete wote chen chen rezi, jeme kembe wambo jambe yan, dupu malun jonze sanweda, kanche kembe tsunge tsonga pa, losandra pe shavla sowa de, mimete wote chen chen rezi, jeme kembe wambo jambe yan, dupu malun jonze sanweda, kanche kembe tsunge tsonga pa, losandra pe shavla sowa de, mimete wote chen chen rezi, jeme kembe wambo jambe yan, dupu malun jonze sanweda, kanche kembe tsunge tsonga pa, losandra pe shavla sowa de.
Sangye Chodang Tsojin
Tsoge
Chonam
chonam
La
la
Chanchu
janchu
Bardu
bardu
Dani
dani
Gyabsun
gyabsu
Chi
chi
Dagi
dagi chi
Chushi
sogi
Jibe
pe
Sonam
sonangi drola
Drolam Penche
penche
Sanjin
sangye drupa sho.
Druparasho Sangye
Chodam
Chodang
tsoge
Tsojin
chonam
Chonam
la
La
chanchu
Chanchu
bardu
Bardu
dani
Dani
gyabsu
Gyabsun
chi
Dagi
dagi chi
Chushi
shegi pe
Jibe
sonang
Sonam Ji
drola
Drolam
penche sangye
Sanjin
drupa sho.
Druparasho Sangye
Chodan
Chodang
tsogi
Tsojin
chonam
Chonam
la
La
chanchu
Chanchu
bardu
Bardu
dani
Dani
gyabsu
Gyabsun
chi dagi
Dagi
chi
Chushi
shegi pe
Jebanda
sonangi
Dagi
drola
Drolam
penche
Sanjin
sangye drupa
Druparasho
sho.
Kangi Tuzi Nizone Tawa Tamje Pambi Chere Tambi Chun Denze Kodam Jela Chanse Lo Good morning everyone. Too old.
Indeedy. So Shannon, I'm wondering if it's working now. We had some internet issues. All right, so it's working now. Thank you.
당아서 가서 참는 마음 직속에 됐으라 감지 참게 람름 징기다 참대 먼저 참래서 디디레셔 단다 레기 에와 셴템바스 딩기르 숨발니 레기 에와 셴템바 셋다 펜조지 에와슬라운디다 텐데야라 주니 나로라야 펜시기 레다 조시기 레세치 송고레스 텐데야라 주니 시비 갑둘라 다 디기 코치 송고다라.
All right, so we're going to continue with the presentation of the stress of the path of enlightenment. So we've been looking for the last few weeks at the presentation of karma actions and the results, and having covered a section that explained the effects of karma or the effects of our actions. Now we're going to look at a section that explains other categories of karma or actions. So let's look at the text. So again, we're looking at the middling Lamrim. So the section that reads other categories of actions is divided, first of all, into 2 points: the difference between propelling and completing actions, and then the difference between what will definitely be experienced and what will not necessarily be experienced. But let's begin with the first category of that is displayed here or presented here, the difference between propelling, this is to say projecting karma, and completing karma. So within the presentation of the 12 links of the Panta Rising, some of the links are regarded as projecting links, and some of the links are regarded as completing links. So similarly here, we have a division into projecting karma and completing karma.
Teresa tinzada je tendrayala chungni xiaonde pena tendrayala chungni ki tambo di ane mariba niba duji sumba namshi shiba
Minzuk.
Minzuk marita mariba namshi duji ane seba de lemba ane kewa teni shini mingsu.
저 그런데
양아 중니
최선 그런 시던데 말이지 조던데로.
언데
오케이.
디 난게 단다디 레 단디로지 마 용구여라스라.
So then looking at the presentation of the 12 links of the Penta Rising, there is the order in which they are taught and the order in which they take place. So, or the order in which they occur. So first of all, of the 12 links, we begin with the first link, which is the link of ignorance. Second link is formatives or compositional actions. The third link is primary consciousness. Now, looking at the next link that takes place, the next one would be craving and after that grasping, and then becoming or existence.
There's 당한주 깨워 양 텐데양 중니디 찬장 조야라야 아니 깨워니 로고레스 라 당한주 단디 깨워들이야 단디 깨워 단달 미 끼비 깨워디 이게 규규비 텐데양라 베나 마리비 텐데 두식 텐데 남식 텐데디 깨워 함미 텐라야 조버레스 라 테니세바 달 렘바디 the kiwi tende nation sendele ya troyadi kiwi tende teni mixu tende ani regbi tende ani givi tende ani chivi tendes tendi yunguras ra.
So then when we look at the 12 links of dependent origination and the links that have occurred in this or previous lifetime, so it takes at the bare minimum 2 lifetimes for one cycle to be completed. So looking, for example, at this lifetime, our lifetime, we were born as human beings. So as we have taken rebirth as a human being, of the 12 links of dependent arising, the link of ignorance, compositional actions, primary consciousness, they have occurred in previous life. Also, craving, grasping, and existence have also occurred in previous life. It depends upon which the link of birth has been established in this life, right? So we've taken birth with the link of name and form, the 6 sources, contact and feeling, and also the links of aging and death.
펜조기 예와슬라온디 레니 게자디 냠도 셰고레스 펜바슬라고콜야 펜지길레 조바슬라온도 조시길레스 니용고 당한주 체디 깨와디 조바칭길레디 깨원디 때라야 용고요레스 로 깨원디 다 조바 깨원디 세바 깨원디 가서다 나 냠도 단 정인디 다 깨원디 아니 수파마레스라디 깨원 함미기 땡기 아니 두시 남시 마리반 두시 남시 아니 세바 어디디다 아니 간주 깨원디 아니 방요레스 다 깨원디 방요레스라디 깨원디다 주요레스로 기요레스.
So then when we look at this round of 12 links of dependent rising, and here this division of karma into projecting karma and completing karma, we can see that this division into projecting and completing accords with the 12 links of dependent arising. And then looking at, for example, this life, what projected this rebirth were links, the links that came in previous lifetime. So the links of ignorance, formative actions, primary consciousness, craving, grasping, becoming, they projected this life. And then in this life, we have other links which will complete, you can say complete or exhaust this life. They become completed, they become exhausted in this life from taking rebirth, the 6 sources and so on.
Tirda, 진짜 다 안주기 배는 안주 다 미개와 인자, 다 덴드 개와 인자, 개와 디 펜지기 레텔야 개와 임캡 개와 코나마도 미겨 연구요 말이스. 라 땅 안드로라 소바 벤 튼드로라 소바 아니 튼드로 예다 녀와 예다 튼드로 어디기 깨와 펜시들라 아니 미기윌리 미 캐우레스 미기윌리 인코그레스.
So in looking at the karma that projected us to this life, we were born as human being, and being born as a human being is regarded as a pleasant rebirth, as a happy rebirth. So the type of karma that projected us to this rebirth is necessarily a virtuous karma. But as it projected a pleasant rebirth or a comfortable rebirth, it is necessarily a virtuous karma. It is not possible for non-virtuous karma to project such a rebirth. Whereas when you look at other rebirths which are regarded as miserable rebirths, like for example being born as an animal, but also other types of rebirths which are considered to be miserable rebirths, like being born as a preta or as in a hellish state of existence, the karma that projects, or the actions that project those actions, those rebirths, sorry, is regarded as non-virtuous karma.
다 nganzugi mi gewati zogshegi ledela ngiba yo maris tandina sonde zogshela ngiba mesedi ten dendri ten imba yana ko zogshe gewi legi zob ngiba yo maris ten ngandri ten imba yana zogshe megiwi legi zob ngiba yo maris.
So first off, we can look at the karma that projected us to this life or to other rebirths, right? So as we said, non-virtuous actions project a miserable rebirth, and virtuous actions project a comfortable or happy rebirth. Now with completing karma, if we were projected to a certain rebirth through virtuous karma, it is not guaranteed, it is not necessarily the case that the completing karma that will play out would be also virtuous. Similarly, if we were projected to a miserable type of rebirth with projecting karma, it is not necessarily the case that the completing karma that will play out would be non-virtuous karma. So this is what Lama Tsongkhapa says in his text. Let's look at this section. In the following page, it says, propelling actions for a fortunate rebirth are virtuous actions, whereas propelling actions for rebirth in the lower rebirth are non-virtuous actions. Now, the completing ones are undetermined.
Tabena penji megiwi pangshin zogshe gewi zobati pena tundro surojik shagres labaina siro tabi da tundro tende sha chosares pena nganta chi tangi chi ye lagroda chi gi metsan yagbu tosoge 냐데 키다 심이 도서라 다 콘저 조시 게베 조고레스 라 그체디 아니 기부친 수수 보고 나신친 나마다 찍고 찍기한 체진 장부 쉬워진 아니 기부 쉬워샤네 다 거기 체 조로도스 근데 그 돈로 기와디 미기 방바레스 이나 조시디 게베 조바레스 게빌리 조바레스.
So then looking at this combination, like for example, having a non-virtuous karma that projected a miserable rebirth, like for example, as an animal, whereas the completing karma is virtuous. For example, Geshe says that here, for example, some people like to keep pets, like a dog or a cat, and they regard those pets sometimes as one of the family members, with this great degree of love and care for the pet, right? So projecting karma that projects a life of an animal is a non-virtuous karma. But then ending up like, for example, a pet dog or a pet cat in a family that really takes good care of the pet is a result of completing virtuous karma, Geshe reckons.
다드니 더 조시 게 가서 펜시 게위 판시 조시 양 게위 조바 대당아주 미망치야도지 그라 베나 수수도지 만다 롱갑 중 아니 파르도 되니다 아니 게위 조바도지 차송스라 아니 메세나로야 page Sajit on Union Doji, Gumbu Doji, or Sada Lay or Dana, and the Sambaki was Shuch, and the Chick Lama Givish some Jimmy Chevi Shavley too, and the church of the and in one tanning Namjit Shuya Ding, Yatamambukilaya, and Mizikin, and Joanza, Gavang Hamadia, and a give Pambari, Sendelia, Zobati, and he gave it Zobaroch. That Tajulaya Kariomen said, Hakumara, that gave it over to Charleston.
So then when we look at it as this idea of completing karma or karma that becomes completed, Geshe says that at least with respect to himself on a personal level has reached the age of 52 years. So in that sense, the virtuous karma up until now has been completed. In a sense that the completion of virtuous karma up until now means that though he was born in a place or scenario in which resources and so forth were limited, still he enjoyed a happy mind or state of mind that was well. Also, he was greatly cared for by lamas and spiritual teachers, and also he was able to spend some time with hundreds of Dhamma's friends that were developing their wisdom, smart or wise Dhamma friends. So in that sense, all of that you can say is a result of virtuous karma. And since Geshe is now 52 years old, you can say that virtuous karma is completed to the point that Geshe says that it seems that he will be next, or in following years, it will be bereft of such virtuous karma. Of course, no one knows what will happen to you or what will happen to oneself at the rest of your life, towards the end of your life. But Geshe said that so far, lots of virtuous karma has been completed, and how much virtuous karma there is still in store, Geshe is not sure.
That Zoji Migi with Zoba, Penshi give Panshin, Zoji Migi with Zoba, Yoris, Ratanganzuta, and me, Milk Gival and Shakti, and Gavari, give Pambari Dinaya, touch me Telaya, Mr. Kambo Telaya, and a Kadushu, Chinyansi, Tamanti, Chanchi, Kaduna, Nasagana de Soba, Chick Ombuman Song, Kanga Shuji Tedeva in the this in a Labalican, the Cambalican, but some of the K Kanga schema does the chick Migi Chick Mountain. In a bed, Kanga shoe trading at the Kanji, Kanga shoe trading it in the doors, or the two, and it Zoshi Migi with Zogores.
So we looked at this scenario in which you had virtuous karma that non-virtuous karma that projected a miserable rebirth with completing karma that is virtuous. Let's look at another scenario in which the projecting karma, projecting a human rebirth, for example, was virtuous, but then the completion karma that plays out is non-virtuous. Like, for example, you might be born in a happy state of rebirth or high state of rebirth as a human being, and yet you will experience a life of difficulties and problems. Things will not work out for you in your life, and you will experience unfortunate situations, like you will be beset by sickness, you might have a certain physical disability, your limbs or organs might not be complete. It's not a matter of just, let's say that it's not necessarily the case that if you have some difficulty with a limb, like difficulty with your hands and legs, then your life is definitely going to be terrible or difficult. Definitely that's not the case. But we can think of the situations where even if one was born as a human being, still the life that is played out is beset by difficulties and problems. So this type of example is a scenario in which the projecting karma was virtuous, and yet the completing karma is non-virtuous.
That didn't give that Zoshi and gave it Zobi led carres. Zoshi Migi with Zoshi Bigi, Migi will led carre, Kadus agres. That ding on this Gunzichigo dosra, Penata Mirkini, and Chick Setondola Soba, Ne Mambuyonya, 미텔라 다디 조시 미기위 조시 비 미기위레 카레레스 라 카두사요레스 어딘디.
So then in relation to that, some questions arise. Like, for example, you might have had virtues projecting karma, projecting a good rebirth, like a human being. And yet the completing karma is non-virtues, contributing to either having a short life or a life that is beset by sickness. So then you might be wondering, what type of karma contributed to this non-virtues completing karma? And when was that karma created? So those things we need to recognize. Right? What karma contributed to that situation, and when was that karma created?
Di penroji shabana nganzu tse delaya migi chubung Tsultrim songchi gewa yakbu sabana digi ani gewa chima laya ani denru kingi ki les saba yodas ta yang tadi tenlaya pena sokjugle sab chimbu dindi saya yungro tadi yungro nganzo ta gyolaya chagda mosu yenza yungro ta di kyo chimale nami nyongi gi lechik sagwas ta kanji gevi lechik sagor migi lechik sagwas ta di chikalamolaya king kitobgi kawkalaya chikalamodelaya ani denru kyo penjigi and dendru kyo drivji gi leg sutab cheni drivji gi sutabni dendru la phamba yungres ine hama sa jabi gi sojug ledi gi namedi kyo di ten la nyongwanza di ledi zojele yan rosha gores.
So just to give you an example of a scenario, for example, in your life you have practiced ethical discipline that abstains from the 10 non-virtues, which means that you have created a good virtue, an excellent virtue, which will then project you to a good state of rebirth in your next lifetime. In your next life, you will attain a comfortable or pleasant rebirth, and that depends upon the karma that you have accumulated, being a virtuous karma. Such a scenario is possible. But then also it is possible, for example, to have accumulated along the way also a very serious karma of killing. So then you reach the end of your life and very close to the time of death, due to some conditions, karma is activated. So suppose that those conditions that come together activate this virtuous karma that you have accumulated before through practicing ethics, which abstains from the 10 non-virtues. Since the karma that is activated at that point would be a virtuous karma, it will then project you to a pleasant state of rebirth, a comfortable state of rebirth in the next lifetime. And yet, because of the negative karma that you've also accumulated through, or non-virtuous karma that you've also accumulated through that action of killing, even though you are going to be born in a good state of rebirth, a comfortable state of rebirth, still the completing karma that will play out would be non-virtuous completing karma.
Ngomatsu ani chi ta chagdang shuk chembe toni let sabjen din de sache let sabjen sa ta loyas leondi ani chöda che ani pigi chötsujin che megi chubung Tsultrim song tu chene ta sedu gi pigi let sabjen sa jo kawkala ani susu let sabjen sa yo na da di ani chi mathem balo sobo tente yongro asro susu khan sheba di sedole ya khan sheba di ta ten thug maros kawkal mathem yongro ta dindri mathem baina 다 시작담 지에디 사도 그러왔어. 비 아주 예바 가리 시작이요 봐야. 비 아니 조디 그 쟁고도스. 쟁치 아니 텔레야 교바기 아니 님부터 쉬고니 시작바이나 디 나멘디 아니 슈촌 로야. 답이야나 아니 레드베드 타도야 소바 딘딩고라 다 딘디 카이 마치는 하바이나 다 세멜레야 미기 주본 거 주름 약부 송진 로반자 아니 세드 평온디 아니 디 아니 레텔야 아니 켄디 체바디타 녜와 요로스 어 딘디 또 덴드롤리키는 할사자비 아니 레드 하데서 디 나메 민치네 아니 조제 미기 조로야 소바 딘디 텐데 용고여서레스.
So then when we think of such a scenario, it is possible that, for example, you're born as a human being, and at the first part of your life, the earlier part of your life, you haven't really understood the Dharma, you haven't understood the essential points of the Dharma, and due to the force of strong anger and attachment, you have acted in a way that is negative, non-virtuous. Now, in the later part of your life, the second part of your life, let's say, you have met the Dharma, you've put it into practice, you have been guarding ethics that abstains from the 10 non-virtues. And at times when we reach the second part of our life, we don't remember very clearly things that we have done earlier on. So of course, sometimes we do. There are some things that we remember, but also there are some things that we do not remember. Some negative actions that we have done, we don't remember them. So then when we think of what we then do in a practice of purification of negative actions, well, when we purify negative actions, we need to think of negative actions or faults that we have done before. We need to think about them, or to at least to remember them, or to think about them. But then if you don't really remember certain things that you have done before, then it seems that they would be left out, they would be remaining outside of your practice of purification. So certainly when you apply those practices of purification, then first of all, you need to be thinking of the faults that you have done before, and then you need to generate a sense of regret for the negative actions that you have done. And through that, you either reduce the power of the negative actions that you have done before, or you render them incapable of producing the results that they would have brought otherwise. So then later on, when you get to the point of death and the transference to next life, a certain being on the verge of death, actions that you have done before are being activated. So for example, you in the later part of your life, the second part of your life, you have guarded ethical discipline, and due to the proximity to this type of virtuous action, it could be activated being on the verge of death, right? So that will then lead you to a comfortable or a pleasant state of rebirth in your next lifetime. But still, there are the things that you have done in an earlier stage of your life, and there are negative actions. And as we said, that they were kind of left or remained even after some practices of purification. It means that the completing karma that will play out in the next rebirth is or can be a non-virtuous action, a non-virtuous karma. So when we do practices of purification, when we lay down negative things that we have done before and we develop a sense of regret, we certainly need to have two components combined together. One of them is to have a sense of regret for negative things or faults that we have done before. And then to also develop a sense of restraint in thinking, henceforth, I shall not do it again. So it is this sentiment is echoed in some rituals that we go through for purification. So, suppose that there is a certain person asking a certain question. Do you see the faults, or do you see the things that you've done as faulty? Do you recognize your faults as being faults? And you need to recognize them as being faults with a sense of regret. And then, are you promising not to do it again in the future? And you need to think 100% yes, I shall not do them again in the future.
어디르다 딘자 덴디 도지 다 덴드로라 양라 냥라 안보 만자 다 간지 조지기 조츠츠는 걸 무두바데 센토마데 네마마데 오와속 미기위 치비 미기위 첼라 돈로다 예달라야 벤주 푸숨 쪼고 여바니 게위 제보 대단한 페이지 기회 방발라 조지게 기회 줘봐 다 미기위 줘봐 니다 페이지 미기위 방발라 조지 미기위 줘봐 기회 줘봐 니때 미시오스
So we read through a couple of lines. Let's actually read through the whole section. Propelling actions for a fortunate rebirth are virtuous actions, whereas propelling actions for rebirth in the lower rebirths are non-virtuous actions. The completing ones are undetermined. However, even in the fortunate rebirth, incomplete limbs, mind and body parts, or sense faculties, hideous looks, a short lifespan, multiple illnesses, poverty, and so forth are caused by non-virtue. Also, in the case of animals and hungry ghosts, abundant prosperity is caused by virtue. Thus, there are four possibilities: that which is propelled by a virtuous propelling action and completed by a virtuous action, or by a non-virtuous completing action, and that which is propelled by a non-virtuous propelling action, and completed by a non-virtuous action or by a virtuous completing action. Game over. Yeah. Okay, so if you stole something in your life, earlier life, and you can't remember it, then it cannot be purified. 저전에 그런 간지치 슈에서 딜라 케시 신중갑선에 양 꼬마치 갭찬에 제말라디 챔바 제마토와이나 케시마 챔와이나 디 샤돔체 두기 마르베 디바 샤요 마르베스
다 요요로 다 딕바이나 샤요 캡슬라고라 다 샤요레스 다 진짜 다 샤담 비기 다지 네버 체슈디 챔바드레샤스 다 케지 텐투면 땅에 응알 네버 체츠보 이 네버 체츠보드 베 네버 마무 슈체버 타쳐버레스 로 차담 모송상 타쳐버 땅에 네버 체츠 다 베사시 상상 네버 체츠드 비 미유라 샤니 샤담 체나 디고레스 디고서레스 로
No, they can still be purified. No, they can still be purified because we say, no, we normally say that all the negative actions that we have done before, all of them can be purified. So if you can remember things that you have done before, that would be the best way to purify them. But even if you cannot remember each of them, then without remember each one of them, when you do a practice of purification, you can think of all the negative actions that I have done before. No, all the measure of negative actions that I have done before, I regret all of them. No, so in that sense, you can include all of them in your practice of purification, but still, the most powerful thing would be also to remember the one that you have, to include the one that you can actually remember.
제 딘지기 지금 샘라요 초여버지다 제토그라서 가서 단답이 홀다 바다 제바이네야 단답에 썸셴드 아니 지금 미기위 촐이야 다 쇼드야 배망부 연거라서 다 딘지 여바이나 가야 마스미 칼다 가주스 망부 아니 논투쇼이 기리 삼성기 삼로드 담아나 땡땡 배 초식 첨부 용사라서 다 디여비톤다 나체 참을로 답배 노샤 Samsung Gabajigabana, the Pesasha, Samsung Gabajigabana, and Deton, the Chinchi Tiri, Sawin in the Miches, Domsum Temitonita, P. Any Shagdam College Jugiabana, and Deli Jugni Shagdam Chebana, the Zodi, and it's Ninji Gomia, Chanju Sam Gomia, and the Tombani Gomia, that Yaramjita Dilla Yomars, the Sungudas, they Dilla Yomar was the Sanji Chu Nimu Tirandos, or Dinti told us some down. Then any the was in the Yashu to Kotai over the Kuyon Dennis Labroda.
The most important thing is to purify negative actions wholeheartedly, in that you really need to have to generate this heartfelt attitude in which recognizes faults as being faults and to regret those faults. No, so it needs to be done wholeheartedly. So if you do it wholeheartedly, recognize your mistakes for being mistakes, you regret them in thinking that alas, I've done them before. And also taking into consideration that even if in our practice we do our best, right? So we try as much as we can to practice well, but because we're still under this sway of afflictive states of mind, inevitably we end up making mistakes. So practice of purification needs to be done wholeheartedly. So developing regret for actions, negative actions that we have done before, and to think, alas, no, I've ended up doing that. Henceforth, I will not do that again. And with that, we practice purification. We lay down negative actions done before. We develop a sense of restraint. And we also apply the power of the antidote. So we meditate on compassion and bodhicitta. We meditate on emptiness. His Holiness the Dalai Lama said that there is no better antidote to those negativities than the meditation on compassion and bodhicitta and meditation on emptiness. This is the essence of the Dharma. One positive thing about negativities, although they're negative, is that they can be purified. So you can say that this is a quality, good quality of negativities. They can be purified.
There kanji sozuge ani chi gejo kanda shigiyo bainaya, kandon gejo kanda shigiyo bainaya, ani tsu miyuti ngaji ani digba tamjilaya, gyoba, ani chinji domsum tembi tonta, chi ani odinji la minita, ani nge gejo samba namda gejo chigo samni gejo lambe baina, ani gejo samalo, ani nimbu topshi nani, ani nimbu kundu chubi toblaya, tan drochogros, o dindi chigo wasares, tarota dindi chigo wasares.
So then as you train in virtue and you also combine that with a certain recitation for purification of negative actions done before, then you think of your objective. What is your objective in your practice? You regret negative actions that you have done before, and you think, henceforth, I shall not do it again. You take up this training in virtue, and you, through that, also apply the 4 powers of the antidote. And of the 4 powers of the antidote, we have the power of thorough application of an antidote, such as, for example, the meditation on loving kindness and compassion, and so forth.
Dadini nyongor ngebata mange balas. Nyongin samjin to chebata saba. Nyong mange ban samjin to chela masaba was. Chebata sabi kebala cheban saba sani kya lunga konelama. Saban mulum to chebaso chubu matobe lesos. Masaban mulum to chebaso chubu. Nyongin lan jebu nyong tuki kone sum. Tela tongchula nyong letin jebu. Setela nyong. Kene nyong tse nibala nyong. Landan shena nyong tse sumba penju nyong was.
So first of all, we looked at the classification of projecting and completing actions. Let's look at another classification which sets out the difference between what will be definitely what will definitely be experienced and what will not definitely or necessarily be experienced. So that which will definitely be experienced is what has been done intentionally and has been accumulated. That which will not necessarily be experienced is what has been done intentionally but has not been accumulated. The difference between what has been done and what has been accumulated is as follows. What has been done is an intention or is a performance with body or speech following an intention. What has been accumulated are many actions apart from the 10, those done in a dream and so forth. Conversely, what has not been accumulated are the 10 types such as those done in a dream. That which will definitely be experienced has 3 categories based on when the effect will be experienced. So that which will be experienced as a visible phenomenon is an action whose effect will be experienced in this life. That which will be experienced after taking rebirth is an action whose effect will be experienced in the next life. And that which will be experienced at another time is that which will be experienced in the life after that or beyond.
데르다 디낭월야 뇽월 녜베 레다 뇽망이베 레스 니송고요레스라 니송고요레다 뇽의 레레스 라운디게 제브 나밍 녜버드 뇽고와도치 송고라 다디 사운다운다 오 뇽의 레지사 사바나 다자니니 닥탑자니니요 사마레 제브 인지위 뇽고그레세 도바딜레그로스다 디 도바딜레그로스라.
Now, when you look at this category that sets out the difference between what will definitely be experienced and what will not definitely be experienced, you might then think that an experience referred to the ripening of a karma at a later stage, like for example, in another life, and therefore you will necessarily experience it. And then if you think that karma that will definitely be experienced means that there's no way that you can purify that action because it will definitely be experienced. It is possible that you might think that if there is such a category, it refers to those actions that cannot be purified.
다디 지당 차니스 시고레 다 지당 차니스 라와이나 캐랑기 레 삽침부지사니 레 삽침부지사니 변나다 속죽 레라오지 로 콜롱 속전도 콜롱케 콜롱 슈탁버지케 디왕기 아니 속제니 파조미 소왕가츠베질이야 아니 가오곰 다 딕소 삼비 다 가오곰 아니 드로바이나 다 속죽 레 삽치슈드 사요레스 디 나밍 데위 뇽이레스 다 딜레디 뇽이글레레스 오나 디 다야요 마레스라나 데라야 님부 톱데 요레스 걔랑 샥담라 주바이나 다야요레스 뇽이글레데 샥담라 주바이나 다야요레스 다 뇽이글레인자 샥담라 마주나 갸자갸담마 걔랑 어머니 끼어 델레 뇽고리 어머니 끼어 치마라 뇽고리 때문에 끼어 치마기 치마 끼어 셴딘디질레 갸자갸담마 뇽고레스 오 디송고레스라.
So that can be explained in general in the following way. So suppose that you have accumulated this serious karma in this life, like for example, the action of killing, an intentional killing, which means that first of all, you have harbored a strong intention to kill another living being. Then you have done the action. And when the life force of the other being has stopped, has ceased, which means that when the killing was done, you felt happy about it. You rejoiced in the killing of another living being. It means that you have accumulated a very serious action of killing. So this action of killing is an action that will be experienced in the future if you don't apply a process of purification, if you don't lay down this action and develop a sense of restraint. So if it doesn't mean that there is no powerful antidote for that. powerful antidote to such actions, powerful antidotes do exist. If you use the 4 powers of the antidote in your practice of purification, they can be purified. However, if that is not done, this karma is definitely to be experienced, either in this life as a visible phenomenon, or in your next rebirth, or the one that will come after that and beyond.
다전에 단지디 소juk 레디 다 정은 주선 용수 저번 참비 레디 라 레디 용이 레레스 다디 샤다 마지나 제브 비기겠다 소juk 레기 나밍 제브디 아니 조디 솔렌 레야 속은 잘고야 들어왔어 인자 디기 제블레야 랑기 속 쇼야디 용거레스 다 랑기 속 지당한주 다 치워서 많이 봐 배나다 지 아니 깬 잡으더니 속 줘야죠다 미생그 소소소 아니 세야로 소바 아니 답경 시야로 소바 딘디 돈다 랑기 속티 줘야디 나민디 용거레스 다 속주글레 셴바 배나 콘론케 아니 조와쌈 무지 춥니 다 피기 바셔미 지 송가가들라 아까 다 딩마송 삼성기 단 겨바기 해줘라스 겨바기 해줘라 다디 아니 레람 무시 용수 조요 말레스 레디 아니 제베 뇨 망해바트 차고레스 로 텔리아 딕바 요레 녜바 요르데 이네야 피기기 소는 속 자고야 나신기 나멘디 뇽고 말레스 간선 그 용수 마트면서 퀄리티 기획 니바 찬산 차요 말레스 레데라.
So here we spoke about an action that had all its parts completed. The 3 parts of an action were completed. So the preparatory part, the actual performance, and the completion of an action, the conclusion, all of them have been established. And therefore, this is an action that is regarded as an action that will definitely be experienced. Which means that without laying down this action and developing a sense of restraint in an action, in a practice of purification, it is certainly, the result of that action will certainly be experienced. So we give an example of a strong action, a serious action of killing, which means that this action is taking somebody else's life. So that action, which consists of these 3 parts in a complete sense, of taking another person's life, will have a result that will also affect your life, be taken in one way or another. So either in terms of you being killed by another person, or that certain conditions will play out, you will be killed in an accident and so forth, right? So the result would be in relation to, the result that will be experienced would be in relation to the action that have created it. So that's one scenario. Now, looking at another scenario, you might have the motivation intending to kill another person. You have done the action, but at the conclusion of this action, when the life force of that person has ceased, rather than rejoicing for the killing of another person, you have a sense of regret and you think, I should not have done that. This is something that I should not have done, which means that as for the path of action, this path of action is incomplete. Since the path of action is incomplete, it is regarded as an action that will not definitely be experienced. This does not mean to say, however, that it's not a negativity, that there is no fault in that action if it is regarded as an action whose result is not definitely to be experienced. What it means by saying that it is not definitely to be experienced is that since the path of action is incomplete, that a complete result will not be experienced.
Yeah.
Jabe? Is it the same with respect to killing animals, or is it just for human beings, I guess, what you're asking? Yeah? Sokju bele di dalan deshigawe na di mi chirola shigiorve yama tundrola sobayan den de sena dalan inas.
Tsangma. 소자 요도죠. 단데 디 소조글레디 소자 요도죠를 쉐고레스. 가정에만 캐는 괜히 dombalimi 거기 비기 시난 소조디 매치고라 잘고레스.
Now, this killing applies to all living beings. No? So this explanation of how the results of actions will be experienced applies to all living beings, killing of any living being. Now, about a week ago, I think, a week or 2 weeks ago, we have taken the vow of approaching virtue. So you've taken the vow of approaching virtue. So within the vow, the type of killing that is counter to the vow that you've taken is a killing of another human being. So that's only with respect to the vow. But in general, any action of killing explained in this section is an action that can be spoken of as not the result of which is to be experienced or not to be experienced. It applies to all actions.
어디레다 디나올에 드송고도 아스라 뇽 녜바다 망해발라 뇽에는 삼신도 제바 싸바 삼신도 제바 싸바슬라운다 정은 주서 용수 차원디 제부 용수 민인기 규직 규만상에 와서 차로연자 아니 삼신도 제바레 싸바레스 다 단지시와 나신기 단 주용수 맞아봐야나 삼신도 제어돼 있느냐 아니 싸요 말이스 로 싸요 말이스 마사빌레 차레스 삼신도 제라 마사바.
So when this section explains the difference between what will definitely be experienced and what will not definitely be experienced, it refers to actions that were intentionally done and has been accumulated or not intentionally done. Actions that were intentionally done and will not definitely be experienced. So that which will definitely be experienced refers to a fully fledged result, a complete result that will arise from an action done intentionally with the three components of the action complete: the performance, the preparatory part, the actual performance, and the conclusion of an action. Whereas when an action is done without those three components being complete, it means that the fully fledged result will not be experienced.
다페시 딘디도지리 디고들다 딘도 땅한 사마 용말다 드니 니버 메기오 주봉기 짱사 메기오 주봉기 짱 땡상부시 니메 짱스 제 메기 주봉기 추름 송발라 때니 아니 디 나밍 제부 카리 용거선디 베기다 덴디 땡지 니그레스 라 덴디 땡지 니그레스.
The next section explains contemplating karma and its effects in particular. And it says, through abandoning the 10 non-virtues, you indeed obtain a good rebirth. So certainly a pleasant state of rebirth, a comfortable state of rebirth will be attained through abandoning the 10 non-virtues.
다 드니 땡 캐버 체인지 땡 캐버 체인지 베나 섬전 탐지기 체도 섬전 탐지기 된 루통인기 상기 공방 주뉴기 땡지 차발이야 아니 다 소주 배선치고 그러지 소주 배선 마시나 할 개왕 하마사비 메기주봉기 수tumla 때네 다다 미 땡지 니어레스 덴루 땡지 니어레스 이나야 미 땡지 니에치네 다가는 참바 지치는 데네 아니 간도데 비기 차다모송 샤원 땅샤바이나 아니 야드레스 키어마르타 만드로스로.
So we have found a good state of rebirth. We're born in a comfortable state of rebirth. Now, on that basis, we can make an effort to practice, for example, the intention to be of benefit to all sentient beings, and thereby, for the sake of being of benefit to all sentient beings, thinking that I need to practice for the sake of becoming Buddha. So in particular, we can say that there is a specific or a particular way of using this human rebirth, this good basis that we have in this life. So that's one way that you can go with that. Another way is that you might think that I have found this good working basis, a good rebirth as a human being in a pleasant state of existence that came through having accumulated the causes for that in having practiced ethical discipline in which I've abstained from the 10 non-virtues. So you become satisfied with that and you don't make any effort to do more. You become complacent. You don't think, or you don't do anything to improve, to develop, and so forth.
ten sambu res lagoras ta ten sambu se dia pigile ya tön ni shagor ma dobege kan la ya madeba ko sambu singidi shashing mares teza kal tön sambu shagres lana ngandru giten le tön dendru giten de sambu res pena tundru ten le tön mi ten de sambu res ta sambu in bi gyunsen kare sayan tonya ragdo 아니 기분도 세 디 차네 상부 샤그만도스 에너 디 돈로레네 도아스라 디 상부 디 샤그만도스.
So we said that we have obtained a good basis. So a good basis means that we were born out as human beings, or there's also a class of gods that are also regarded as those in a good basis, which means that humans and gods have obtained a pleasant state of existence, a good state of a good basis. So then when we say good basis, what do we mean? Well, we say that it's a good basis in relation to something else, right? So being a good basis is stated in comparison with or in relation to something else. So in relation to a miserable rebirth, to a miserable base, like for example, being born as an animal, being born as a human being is regarded as a good basis. So is it because, for example, as human beings, we enjoy better food, delicious food and so forth? Is that what makes it, relatively speaking, better than animals? It's not that.
Tundru tenle khabar de pawati namju triyang nibach yores namju pigi ta chik namju ta chodu kyowa pena chik chamba da ninji ani chanju gsem tombani tobi sharabla soba ki thuya gi nibadi mi tenle yores tinza tent samboreshas odila goras ra.
So we regard being born as a human being as having a good basis in comparison with those in a miserable rebirth, because as human beings, on that basis, we can develop our intellect, our wisdom. The type of wisdom that we have as human beings, the type of intelligence that we have is supreme in comparison with other living beings, because we can put it to use in developing loving kindness and compassion. Bodhicitta, wisdom that realizes emptiness. And because we have the ability to do it as human beings, to develop a wisdom in this way, then in relation to other states of rebirth, it's considered to be a supreme basis.
아니 로도다 만드로가 난신기 소술라야 니버여바 난신기 니버디 콤펄타야디다 아니 로존치야디 로 로존치야디 다디 다미 제토그를 마도 샴바 제토그마다스 어디 로존치니 다치 샴바곰이야 닌지곰이야 딘디기 아니 로존치바이나 당원의 단내기 남지 야외 콤버 통행기 ten singing samashik teni chagdo gores this was lagbala ro suzu lagbala the year was.
So we have the ability to do it. We have the ability to do it, but when we recognize the potential, if we just recognize that we have the ability to do it and live it at this and not use that ability, we will put it to waste. We will just waste it. So it's just like saying that you have seeds that can give rise to crops. So just having the seed does not mean to say that things will grow out of it. You need to cultivate it, to provide it with everything that it needs in order to grow into a rich harvest. So similarly, we need to develop our potential. We have that potential, but we need to develop it in that we increase it through, first of all, studying and training our mind. And we can do it as human beings. We can train our mind. So we train our mind in loving kindness and compassion, all the way to the attainment of the state of omniscience. And we have the ability to do it.
Kato posum soba, ring posum soba, onju posum soba, sik zumba, wanchewa chakba, keba nyin tang, top down dembo was. You check this.
All right, let's read through the next section. There is a booby trap in the next section. Let's look at it. So it says, through abandoning the 10 non-virtues, you do indeed obtain a good rebirth, but were you to achieve a fully qualified basis for accomplishing omniscience, you would be able to cover the ground in your meditations on the path in an unparalleled manner. Therefore, you should try to achieve such a life. So this has 2 points. First of all, we're going to look at the fully ripened excellent qualities and their functions, and then the causes of the fully ripened effect. Now, looking at the fully ripened excellent qualities and their functions. So the first has 8 points: excellent lifespan, excellent complexion, excellent lineage, excellent power, excellent words, renowned for being powerful, male rebirth, and strength. As Geshe said, there's a little problem here.
I'll did the summary. Give us the put Karsota Puchi will Geshe Yatam Korea summaries. Give us the Milaya. Give us the Kaukale Mila Kogordas. Or did that Gurtama was that Gurondi, that drama to Guru, and that the Kevan said the me and the shot your wrestler. What the Mila Kogordas.
So, although here in this translation and also in Tibetan language, you can use these specific words to refer to being born as a male. Geshe says that he doesn't think that this is the interpretation that should, the translation that should be applied here to this term, because this term can also mean to say that you have taken a good rebirth. So, for example, rather than saying that a male rebirth would be a fully ripened effect, if your rebirth is as a human being, regardless of your gender, that's an excellent attribute of fruition. So looking at it again, so here Geshe said that this term male rebirth can also be translated differently, interpreted differently as being born as a human being. So Karloin di tamboni loimbe.
Dinama Karsa Kevin the top of the temple, Tamun Hunji Pembe, Syrian neighbor.
So let's look at the first attribute of fruition, which is excellent lifespan. So the first is to have a long life propelled by an earlier propelling action and to live accordingly. On this basis, you undertake actions for the purpose of yourself and others, accumulating a lot of virtue over a long period of time.
Then even the Katotan, Eve Lela, Ombo Manson Meba, Chunshan Kabo, then the Ton Zamji, Doja Gani, Doshan, T. Sik Nienos, Somban Jiktimbi, Kurshi, Chakbi, Ring Tombo Geba, then go Alamanda Drogo, Shivan Lonjo, the Nyandan Corp, Pacho, then the Simjan of duty, member shadow, Ngaban Lunga Ki, Shem Mulavi, Simjan Namji, Sik Zimbawo, then Duji Simjan Duji, member shadow. 주반의 점발을 점봐서 연대된 대비 깨원 남기 천을 수키고 된 자와 탐지 주초집이 제버서진 거 뉴드 년노스 오케이 다디레도 dum반의 포원다 덴보 송샤
So looking at the second excellent complexion. The second is to have a good complexion and attractive physical form, well proportioned with complete sense powers. Owing to this, disciples gather just delighted to see you and listen to your words. The third is excellent lineage. The third is to be born into an excellent family that is well known and respected by the world. Owing to this, your commands are accomplished and not transgressed. To have excellent power, the fourth, is it the fourth or the fifth? Anyway, the fourth, okay. The fourth is to have great wealth, many friends, and numerous helpers. Owing to this, you gather many beings around you and bring them to spiritual maturity. The fifth is the fifth respected words is to not deceive others through your verbal or physical actions so that they trust your words. Due to this, you gather sentient beings with the four ways of gathering disciples and bring them to spiritual maturity. Now next, the sixth is renowned for being powerful. It is to possess excellent qualities such as joyously striving and generosity and so forth, so that you become an object of veneration of great beings. Owing to this, they help you with all activities, acknowledge your deeds, and quickly heed your instructions. Now next is male rebirth. So Geshe applies another interpretation, but here it says the seventh is to be born a male.
그래서 단중에 균설 가지고 봤어. 단중에 가지 다디르다 단단 아주 유두 가실을 때네. 유두 가실을 때온디 아니 깔리슈 열었다. 로. 개바드 분명히 개바 슈 열었다. 율롱 가실이야. 슈 강가 열었다. 다 딘들 때는 다 송구 얘기했어. 자위기 산주점 된 데기 줄이야. 리주다 품이야. 자원이네 매송 열었다. 이나 딩이 난가 용시 말다. 이나 유두 가실을 단단 아주 통신바 율롱 가실이야. 슈베 아니 강가도 왔어. 뭐 딘들 때는다 송초거로 알아.
So here the text continues with giving kind of this explanation of another excellent attribute of fruition is being born as a male. But Geshe says that maybe another way to look at that is in terms of place and time, where you consider how in certain places, certain point in time, living as a woman is much harder than living as a man. Particularly if you're born in a place where there's such a great disparity between men and women, where women go through a great deal of hardship. It's not just a discussion of how it used to be before. Even at present time, when you look at some places in the world, you can see how being born as a woman and living your life as a woman is so much harder than being born as a man. So that's one point that we can make. Another one is that still when you look at the teachings of the Buddha, you can see that in terms of attaining the state of enlightenment, the Buddha emphasized there's no difference between genders, men or women. There's no difference in terms of your ethnicity or your social ranking and so forth. Everyone can become Buddha, but still when we look at places and times, we can see that in some situations, women undergo much greater hardships.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm. Hmm. Hmm. All right, so Dachinla is saying that reading through this section, it says that this allows you to become a receptacle for all excellent qualities, and with aspiration and effort, a receptacle for increasing wisdom. You're not afraid in a crowd, and nothing prevents you from traveling together with anyone else or from living in seclusion. So it seems that these qualifications can apply also to men. No, so not only to a woman, but it can just as well apply to a man. So as a kind of we can find men which are not qualified by those qualifications. So you're saying that it's regardless. I think that your point is that regardless of your gender, men or women, to have this fully ripening effect means that you have those qualifications. Yeah. Dila kebu ni deshe gashdoa. Kebu ni la dila powantan demba pasha. Dila deni yandan chanjengi nutan dumatan soa shera yangwe nudu gyua. Ane kudumi jiba da semchen tamshetan henchik tu joa dila sobarwa. Di tadi halam peshe kebu nila sena polayan daglan peshe jayo resa kan sena bena poka shi shera tami demba yamena kol du jikba tan senten tamche lenchi draw maimba dende polayan dende chi yon sigirwa shenson puina pomoina sutan suina yan yonten daran simbego ne dewaina ni namengi kiawa dende si chogirwas
인데 인스라 다인 제 제자 단지쇼 나지 유두기 차네 아니 갑콜이야 지 가서 다지 안저 랑싱기 아니 안저 쩌단 비기기 다냠 제데이나야 그 랑싱기 케버치 요르와스다디 에 안저 케온디네 안저 통절이야 지 지용기 차네 비기 아니 숙덥 체종 슈크체총 카리는 도와서 디고 기온딘 여르마도 딩안서지 칼라테 당도다지 두로건당 케바직 마르스디 디여라다 딘지 토니 지 생기 느슈월야 아니 지용기 차네 아니 지 드야디 뇽도 딘지 케바직다 간지 용고다 디나 가서 딘지 마무 시에 대바이나 아니 가시가시 샘을 숑고 마르스 디마션나 초스케요 마르스라
Yeah, Geshe completely agrees with you on this point. And as I said, when you look at Lama Tsongkhapa's explanation that comes from some time ago, you still need to take this explanation and apply it as relevant to a specific place and point in time, right? So this is one way of interpreting it according to time and place. But also together with that, you can say that although we can speak about the equality of all of us as living beings, regardless of the gender, still, when you look at some of the natural physical attributes that we have, you can say that, of course, we also have differences between us in a sense that, with some of human attributes is kind of being, some are stronger than the others, some kind of develop bigger bodies than others. So such differences do exist, and those differences can also contribute to, for example, whether or not you're afraid to be in a crowd or nothing prevents you from traveling together with anyone else and so forth. There could be such physical differences that can be seen that also contribute to that. So Geshe feels that with this point, with this section, when it begins with saying that the interpretation here is that it is, being born in a male is one of those attributes, then we can discuss it to a great length. But Geshe feels that since it is kind of a difficult point to think about, there will always be points which we will find difficult that for us would be kind of something that we cannot really you can say containing a mind would be inconceivable in that sense for us.
다 개반이 문기 레기 투 랑신기 네버 총신 네메라 친디 겐리 총이 쪼체와 데네 랑신기 된라 칸라야 메교시 쪼슈치라 템베 소수 토베 톱톱니 원시 뉴로스 대사조라.
Now, the last attribute of fruition, the eighth one, is strength. And it says the eighth is to be naturally healthy and free of adversity, to have a great enthusiasm owing to the present conditions in your life, through the power of previous actions. Owing to that, you do not get overwhelmed by whatever goals you or others may have, and in reliance upon intense diligence, you attain the power of fine investigation, whereby clairvoyance will quickly develop. So with that, we will leave the text here for today. So we will finish with the final dedication of the Lamrim. Put it on the screen. No, thank you. So for my two collections, Vast Space, I have amassed from working with effort that is practiced for a great length of time. May I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds' wisdom eyes blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all life and Manjushri. May I find the best completed graded paths of teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by my practice. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings with the points of the as I've discerned them. May I uphold Buddha's teachings for a very long time, with my heart going out with great compassion in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, or once spread have declined. May I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and by the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time, if by even this graded path to enlightenment completed due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all humans and non-human beings eliminate adversity and create conducive conditions for practicing the excellent paths, never imparted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous practices, may always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere. Thank you.